So I just want to quickly go over, because there's a fourth pshat that Reb Yaakov is going to say about Avihu, since it says Avihu 3 times instead of Aviv. It's going to have a fourth pshat, but you need to know a different piece by Reb Yaakov to understand this pshat. But let's quickly go through the first pshat. Very problematic. Reb Yaakov's first pshat. I mean, with regard to the 2 places in Zechariah and Divrei, it's very good because it's a not Lashon Nofel al Lashon, meaning that the place over there, it says Udikaruhu Avihu, the Karuhu Avihu, Vayisimehu Avihu. So it's a Lashon Nofel al Lashon. But the other places, he has a problem in his first pshat, because it doesn't really say like Hallelujah, like it says Hallelujah as Hashem, Hallelujah, right? Hallelujah, but that doesn't say over here by his. And Daniel Michaels asked a good question also. So we went to the second pshat. The second pshat is that the term Aviv is used when there's only one son, right? So therefore, Shimshon was either an only child, or according to Chazal, an only son, and therefore they use Avihu, and he tries to explain that Shlomo Melech, twice it says Avihu by him, because he remained the only son for the kingdom. The other brothers like Avshalom, Amnon, Adoniyahu, right, were all killed out, and therefore the only son that remained for Malchus was Shlomo, and therefore he's called Avihu. And he learns this way on Divrei Yom Zechariah as well, and it's not really bad. On Zechariah, it means Udakaruhu Avihu V'imo, saying even if it's only child, they'll kill him if he claims he's a Navi. And in Divrei Hayomim, Vayisimeu Avihu L'Rosh, even though he wasn't a Bechor, but since he was the only son, so he was placed L'Rosh. So he wants to say that maybe that you use this idea when there is when there's only son. But then he says a pshat al pi Kabbalah. I think actually, even though it's al pi Kabbalah, it's probably the best pshat, because the Seder Adorah says that Manoach is, Shimshon is a Gilgal of Nadav, and therefore the Seder Adorah says that he has to do a lot of tikkunim, like not drink wine because they drank wine. He didn't marry Jewish women because they never got married, right? He says there's a lot of different tikkunim. That's the Seder Adorahs from the Rav of Belarus, of Minsk. And then Reb Yaakov comes along and says something very interesting. Reb Yaakov says that if Shimshon was the Gilgal of Nadav, then his father was Manoach was the Gilgal of Avihu, and that's why he's called Avihu. When is he called Avihu? Whenever he's separated from his wife. Whenever he's Ilu not married, he's called Avihu. Whenever he goes with his wife, it's Aviv V'imo. So he says, you see that whenever he's separated, because Avihu, like Nadav, didn't get married, and therefore he's called Avihu over here. And that Reb Yaakov explains that this is the idea over here. Why he's called Avihu Dafk in those places, because he's not with his wife, right? He doesn't really answer why the other places don't have it. So you could really learn that when it's Lashon Nofel al Lashon, they use that too. It's not just automatic that they only use it in one case. They use it for different reasons. So when it's Lashon Nofel al Lashon, they use it, right? He doesn't really speak about, if I'm not mistaken, he doesn't really speak about um, uh, the case of Shlomo Melech. He doesn't really say. Um, one second. Yeah, he doesn't really say. He doesn't talk about Shlomo Melech. Why Shlomo Melech would be called Avihu over here. Then he has a fourth pshat, which is a very interesting pshat. But in order to know this pshat, you have to have the piece I'm giving you this week. Okay? So the piece I give you this week really starts on, you have, I think, page 1, right? Now, this is a very interesting piece. It's about Shimshon HaGibur's mother and sister. Okay, so let me get a Tanach. I have a Tanach right here. We should get a Tanach. I actually didn't find my Tanach. I don't know where it is, but this is the Haftorah of Naso, right? So it's the first chapter over there of Naso. So we'll do that. Okay. So what it says over there is like this. In chapter Yud Gimel, Pasuk Gimel, right? It starts in Pasuk Beis. Vayera Malach Hashem el Isha Vayomer Elehi Nei No Ata Kara V'Lo Yalad V'Harit V'Ladet Ben. You are a kara and you didn't give birth, and you will get pregnant and you'll have a child. And then a few psukim later, it says in pasuk Hey, Ki noch hara v'yoladet ben. Behold, you are pregnant, right? And you will bear a child. So there's something strange over here. In pasuk Bey says you'll become pregnant. And over here she is already pregnant, right? That's what it says. Okay? So Reb Yaakov says something original. I have never found anyone who says it on the Gemara and Baba Batra. I'm shocked that nobody says it. People say a lot of things about that Gemara, and they just mamish miss it. Reb Yaakov learns the Gemara completely different, and than everybody else. And I can't understand. To me, it's emes lamita what Reb Yaakov is saying over here. I searched and I searched. I couldn't find it. If anyone else could find it, I'll give you a shikach because it seems so obvious after Reb Yaakov said. So Reb Yaakov says like this, page Reish Mem Tes, Hinach no akara lo yolad v'arita v'ata yishamri, right? Ki hinach hara. Reb Yaakov brings both things. V'harit is future tense with a vav ha'mahapech, but the next one is you have already become pregnant. Very strange. How did that happen within 2 psukim, right? Ayin Baba Basra, Daf Tzadi Aleph Amid Aleph. Okay? Imad Avram Avinu, that's what it starts with. And then it says, Imad the Shimshon. Who's the mother of Shimshon? We know Eishes Manoach, but it name's, right? Ponis, right? Ponis. It says in the Gemara in Baba Basra, V'achte Nishin. And his sister's name was Nishin, right? So his mother's name was Ponis, right? And Ponis, I should say, not but Ponis. And his sister's name is Nishin. By the way, the name sounds so strange, right? You don't have names like that, but it's in Divrei Hayamim. It's mamish there in Divrei Hayamim. If you have a Tanach, Divrei Hayamim Aleph, chapter Dal, Pasuk Gimel, it says there the name Hatzaleponi, Teleponi, it says over there. It was hey at the beginning, but some people say she's from the tribe of Judah, right over there. She's listed, and some people say it's Manoach's wife. It's this where the Gemara got it from. Okay, so the Gemara asks, "Lamai nafkamina." Who cares? You're telling me what the name is? Who cares what the name is? But what the mother's name is, the sister's name is, right? It is to answer up the minim, okay? The heretics. So Reb Yosef brings at the bottom the Rashbam, right? I have the Gemara right here, so I'll read it from the Gemara, the Rashbam. The Gemara needs explanation because what does it mean with Chuvas Haminim, right? What does that mean? So he says, L'chuvas Haminim. Oh, he also says like this. Ime de Shimshon, Mishum da Iriba Kro, Tuva, Ksivnami Lov Limo Lohigid, Hutzrich Lefar Shakol Advar Me'elu Shwalim Aminim, Matam Einon Yodim Shmosam. The Minim keep asking us, since she's mentioned so many times, how come her name is not mentioned? Well, I don't understand why that would be a question the Minim would ask. They're saying, like, what do they mean to say over here, right? It's not clear how the Rashbam is what he's saying over here, because they mentioned the mother so many times. And it says, lovely mo lo igid. I don't know why he has to give that separate pasuk. They have to say, the minim always, yes, matam einon yodim shmosam. Why do you need the sister's name the Rashbam is bothered with? Okay, the mother's mentioned a lot, so you want to know her name. But the sister, she says, you mention her Agav. Okay, that's a little bit of a dochik. You mentioned the sister Agav, the mother. L'shuvas haminim, the Rashbam says, sheshol lanu yoser, be'elu minoshim acheros k'deprecious. They ask about this woman more than others because, I'll even help the Rashbam here, because she's becomes such a famous woman. God speaks to her first time. The Nevi'im gave us this name, Baal Peh. So I don't know what he means over here, the Nevi'im. Does he mean the pasuk in Divrei Yom? He would say it. Or does he mean we have a Kabbalah from the Nevi'im? I'm not exactly sure. Reb Yaakov doesn't understand this, basically. He says, Ayin Pirush Rashbam ain't a movement Pirush. His Pirush is not really understandable. Venerally. Now watch this, Reb Yaakov. This is Reb Yaakov at his finest. Lefarish Tehine B'Shimshon Nira L'Chayra Meiloshan HaMalach Shehu K'Divrei Haminim Shehem B'Tchila Omar La V'Harisa V'Yaladet Bein. What did the Malach say at the beginning? That you're gonna get pregnant and give birth. Tahainu loshen atid. Ubetoch hadvarim omalo ki nochara. And then all of a sudden, two psukim later, he says, you are pregnant. Then who are the minim here? Rabbi Yaakov was making it clear. The Catholics, the Christians. And what are they saying? So Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky says like this, 268. V'zel lashon Rabbeinu, Be'emes li'Yaakov al Torah, Kfia nira haminim shem hanotzrim, Amru kish'anu lo agnu aleim. When we laugh about them, kish'amru shenit abra beruach hakodesh, when we say that she became pregnant, Mary became pregnant, beruach hakodesh, meaning through a spiritual pregnancy. How do you say it? An immaculate conception. So we laugh at them about that. Amru heim farhayel olamim. They'll say Sharei Shimshon Nisaba B'Dibur HaMalach. The Malach said, right after he said you're going to come pregnant, all of a sudden he says Ki Nachara, right? Sharei B'Tchila Dibra Daylo Hoysabu Uberes. Sharei Ifticha B'Loshen Asim U'B'Toch Advar Mamashi Nachara L'Fika Chayu Shimshon Kadosh Merechem. Why was Shimshon had to be a Nazir? Because he's immaculate conception, right? So mipnei ha shuvas haminim, right? The minim are going to claim that it's an immaculate conception. Now listen to the way Reb Yaakov learns the pshat over here. You're going to see in a minute, but what does it say over here in Baba Basra? It says, and his sister, right? His sister's name was Nashid, right? And the Gemara says, L'may nafkamina, and all the Mefarshim learn it on the mother and sister, or on the mother. Rabbi Yaakov says, it's not on the mother at all. It's on the sister. And what's the nafkamina bringing me the sister? What does she have to do with anything? Why you give me name? Chuvas Aminim. If it's immaculate conception, you only have one. How did she get two kids? Obviously, she got pregnant the normal way. Beautiful shot. I mean, I searched for it in Tanach Ronim. I couldn't find it. You look at the Marsha, look at the Yaakov. They're off. They don't say it. I want to just show you how some people learn it. But first, I wanted to just give you quickly that the Jastro learns the word min, right? I underlined it in the page 4. A Jewish infidel, mostly applied to Jewish Christians. Okay, like Reb Yaakov says, and then the what do you call it? I think the Aruch is also learning that way. The Aruch, who lived, of course, in the time of the Rishonim, right? In the parentheses, I don't know what he's saying there, what the Yiddish is over there, but in the parentheses, it says Aleph Beis Nirali. I'm not sure what Aleph Beis means. Nirali Shatam Milazu Shanotim Min Hadas. The people who go away from the religion, they used to call themselves the believers. The original Catholics called themselves ma'aminim. Chazal katu amilim v'kar minim. And Chazal cut off the word and said, not ma'aminim, minim.
You're still reading the Jasper? Where are you?
I'm in the Aruch, page 5.
Page 5. Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so by the parentheses, not at the beginning of the Aruch, when he just gives examples. L'mashal Sefer Torah shekosvo min, right, over the Elilim. But he says in his own, he says the original name, the etymology of the name minim is from the word ma'aminim, because they were always called the ma'aminim. They called themselves the believers. They believed in Yoshka and Jesus. So they called, but Chazal didn't want them called ma'aminim because they have the wrong emuna. Okay, v'karum minim ki yesh beineim minim shonim. They have all different types, so therefore they call them amin, not ma'aminim. Call them amin. But again, I think it's referring to the Christians. So Reb Yaakov's 100% right that when it says the word, just like the Jastro said, when it says the word min in Chazal, it means the Christians. It doesn't necessarily mean over avodah zarah, but why does it say avodah zarah? I told you that's the censor already. Rashi's not going to write Hanotzrim because they're going to close down his shop, his winery, right? If they do that, so it's not going to say. Now I wanted to show you. There's a famous encyclopedia. Page 6, I made a mistake. I said page 7, but it should be page 6. There's a famous encyclopedia. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Otzer Yisrael. It was written over 100 years ago. First Jewish encyclopedia. It's a wonderful encyclopedia written by a bunch of different people, but the editor was a fellow by the name of Eisenstein. He wrote many other svarim, Otzer HaMinhagim, Otzer Vikuchim, all the Otzers he wrote. And the Chiddush was, he was in America. He lived in America, and he wrote this for people to learn how to read Hebrew. He wrote a very beautiful, easy Hebrew. But in Otzer Yisrael, he has 25 authors. Anyone who's an expert in Jewish history, but this is his own. He signs it at the end with an aleph. That's Eisenstein. But if you take a look, that's Otzer Yisrael. It has on top, and then I underlined it, right? Kanere nimtzu kvar bimei Chazal, anashim shlo eminu b'gvura Shimshon, o shechoshvu ki Shimshon lo haya v'lo nivra ki mashalhu. They thought Shimshon was just a marshal. You don't have a person that strong that can do such a thing. So it must just be a marshal for a Hercules, because it's like Greek mythology. So now you have Jewish mythology. Right? That's why they gave us the name of his mother, right? Tzilel Ponis, right? Why did they give us the name of the mother? To tell me it's not a marshal, right? Chazal giving you the name to say it's not a marshal, right? V'shem achosim nishin. To say we have the mother's name and the sister's name, that can't be a marshal. L'mayin afkamina, right? L'chuvas ha'apikorsim. He has a different text in the Gemara because again, the censor. L'chuvas ha'apikorsim. Well, maybe he did it himself, right? So he says for the chuvas ha'apikorsim, but him, it's not the Christians anymore. It's people who said, because the Christians would never say Shimshon didn't exist. They don't say anything like that in Tanach, right? So Apikursim that said it, right? So he says that's what in the time. But why does he say even in time of Chazal? Because in his day, people denied things in Tanakh. But you don't find that in times of Chazal. So he says, no, you see, times of Chazal, that's the way he learns the Gemara, that it brought the mother's name and sister's name to tell me this, right? First of all, you don't need the sister's name for that. The mother's name's enough, right? But okay, you say you want to bring a bigger raya. But you're going to have to say the Minim are not Christians anymore. That's not so pashut. They're apikorsim. They don't believe in Tanakh being real. But we don't find it in those days. Time of Chazal, they had people like that. But they certainly had people that were already Catholics in time of Chazal. So Reb Yaakov is basically saying this idea, right? Very different than, if you look at the Marsha, he kvetches and kvetches about this. He doesn't know what to do with it. Pash doesn't know what to do. But this is what the Otzer Yisrael says, which is a nice chap. But I'll tell you where he's coming from, because he grew up with the maskilim, so he knew that they deny stuff like this. So he's projecting his disclaimers, the people who are going against the Masorah, because in his day that was it. He lived in the 1800s. So he says that's what the Gemara means, but it's a little bit of a projection. Rabbi Yaakov is saying very pashut. Now take a look what Rabbi Yaakov says here. Since Shimshon was born immaculate conception, Mishum Hachi, right? This is page Reish Nun, 4 or 5 lines from the top. Mishum Hachi Amrinan de Gam Achosa Haislo, Achosa Haislo. Vesha Sharamzu Lanu Gam Kain, the Ime de Shimshon Va'achse Nishin Havu. He says an unbelievable, interesting pshat. This is way out. He says, Achse doesn't, her name wasn't Nishin. It's to be read like this. Klomar, Nashim Pshutos. The Efshar Sharamzu Lanu, they were Rama saying his mother, the mother Shimshon, was this woman. Ima Achse Nishin Hayu. They were women, regular women. Nishin, it's a very big chap. I mean, Rav Yaakov here. I mean, it's right. They were women. They weren't anything special. Pshutos, right? That's they're in the Emes Yaakov ala Torah. Rabbi Yitzchak Kamenetsky brings that Rabbi Yaakov tries to kvetch that there's a lot of, because the Rashbam doesn't make sense. There could be people played around with the Girsos over there. People play that around with Girsot. But clearly what Reb Yaakov is saying is, right, well, let's take a look what he keep reading. Umatzasi acharko medrash bamidbar rabba, she'amru also shad niklata hazera b'me'eha shahaya betoch gimel tashmisha v'hainu mishum kosh yizos. The medrash really is bothered with the same question, but it says, since she had intimacy less than 3 days, until 3 days, it could be niklat, and she could become pregnant. So hine chara, right? She wasn't pregnant, and then all of a sudden niklat, right? Didn't have to wait, niklat. That's the way Chazal learn it. Ubemes Yonas and Tirgum Arishon Varit b'lashon atid, v'haina chara b'lashon hova, v'haina kedivrei midrash rabbah. Avol Rashi Sham, Mashi Parshas Lech Lecha by Sorah, it says a similar lashon. Mashma Kipshute Tavai lashon Atin. That's the way all the Rishonim learn, that even though it says a lashon Avar, right? It really means a lashon Atid. It means why? Because sometimes when a malach announces, people say, "Well, now it's going to certainly happen," and therefore it's like an Avar, but it doesn't really mean literally. And then he goes on to say like this: the efshel lefikach kosev it says over there violadet. It doesn't say violetis. Violadet b'loshen hove. Lirmol sheme'ata yoledis. Maybe he's trying to tell us that violadit, in a lashon of hova, to tell us that right from now on, you're going to be a bearer. Okay? Shvati yoledis. Why? V'lav dafka iron zeh. Shetolid rak shimshon. Kamo shedima haminim. Not just this, right? That's why it didn't use the word in the text. It didn't use the word violedet. It says violadit, right? So the Radak already asked the question, like, it has a lashon over there, it has a lashon osid, right? Here, I'll show you what it says over there. It says like this. Here. It says, Ki nochara violadit. Okay? Now, yoladit means you already gave birth. Yoledet means you're giving birth. This is, Radak says, it's made up of both. It's not clear why. Violadit. So Reb Yaakov says it could be, it's telling us, Lashon Hova here. Lirmo sheme'ata tia, not just future tense, right? That you're going to give birth, but present tense. Lav dafkei ron zeh shetolid rak shimshon kamo shedima minim shlo haya kan ma'asen nisim bilvad ela shahayse kan pekida. This was not a ma'asen nes; it was a pekida. Just like, let's say, with Chana or Sarah, Vashem pakade Sarah, meaning she can now get pregnant, right? So that's why he uses the term present tense, violadet, you will now be giving birth. Aval, next page, haminim chashvu kvar kamo in yanam. They learn it like a past tense. The hara and the yoladet, like ukoshke lamandom perakama desota. Rabbi Yaakov brings up something interesting here. The Gemara in Sota says like this: the Shimshon al Shmo shel Kadosh Baruch Hu Nikra. Shimshon is called on the name of God because it says in Tillim that God's name is Shemesh. Okay, the Gemara has a havamina like that. They read the pasuk in Tillim. If you take a look at the Gemara there, they read the pasuk in Tillim as if the word Shemesh is God. So the Gemara asks, so you're not allowed to erase the word Shemesh if it's God. The Gemara says, no, it doesn't really mean that the name of God is Shemesh. It means the Shemesh, God is like the Shemesh. Al maskanu b'shum the mugin umatzil. God's like the Shemesh that he protects. So Shimshon also. So he says, but you see, in the Gemara had a havamina. The Shimshon Shmo Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Shimshon is on the name of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So he says, right away, the meaning are going to say, you see, Chazal also held that way. Jesus is Shmo Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu, Son of God, right? So he says, no, but the Gemara's maskan is not like that, so you don't have to worry, right? But he says, you see, from the Gemara, wanted to tell you that, people are going to say what they're going to say, and we have to answer it up. So that's the way Reb Yaakov learned the piece about the Gemara in Baba Basra. And again, I think it's unbelievable that what Reb Yaakov was saying here, that the whole Gemara, when the Gemara says over here, L'maynaf Gemina, the question is not on the mother. The question is on the sister. Who cares about the sister? She doesn't belong here. That's what the Rashbam's problem was. He says, well, you have to say they brought the sister because they brought the mother. No. The whole question's on the sister, right? L'maynaf Gemina, you bring the sister. L'tshuvas aminim. Because you see, she gave another birth. So you see that God opened her up, opened up her rechem. It's not nisim. It was not a nes, even though it looks like that God is saying that you should, like what the Goyim say, you should be a Nazir, should be a Nazir Elokim because you're going to be Kadosh Mirechem, all these things that the Christians use. I want to tell you something very interesting. All the years that I read Vikuchim between Gedolei Yisrael in the Tkufas HaRishonim and and Goyim or heretic Jews that fought against like the Ramban, Cristiano, or Dominique and Reb Yechiel Paris, right? I never found the Goyim ever using Shimshon. I've always wondered about it. There's a sefer called Otzer Vikuchim. The same guy Eisenstein put together a lot of Vikuchim, Otzer Vikuchim. Someone has to write a little bit of a commentary. Maybe they did already, but I didn't look through all the Vikuchim. I looked through the Mafteach. Nothing on Shimshon. There's probably 10 Vikuchim there. Nothing on Shimshon. Right? I don't understand that. Reb Yaakov is so right. If I was a guy, I would mamash use this. They use things from Yeshaya, from other places. This is the thing I would use. I have to ask, that Rabbi Singer this question. Maybe he'll know. That famous Rabbi Singer. He's a fellow that that argues with the Catholics and the Christians. He knows the New Testament better than the Old Testament, right? He's like really good at that. He knows the Old Testament pretty good too. Don't get me wrong. Okay, let's go back now to last week, page Reish Sam. Okay, now that you have this background, right? And again, I really would like if someone could get back to me and say who else says this, because I didn't find anybody who says this, Reb Yaakov. And by the way, this thing was already published when the Art Scroll published their Shas, and they don't bring Reb Yaakov's Pshat. They kvetch and they kvetch and they kvetch, but they don't read Reb Yaakov's Pshat. They didn't see it. It says like this on Reish Samach, Od Yesh Shlomo. This is Reb Yaakov trying a fourth Pshat in a view. This is something like nobody even tries to tackle. Aviv, okay. We have 7 times. Let's not get bent out of shape about it. Reb Yaakov's trying to tackle it, and now is a 4th way. Od Yesh Shlomo. Amay Nikra Avihu.
Do we have Reish Samach?
What?
Do we have
Reish? It's page 4, Pinchas. Page 4
from last week.
Oh, page 4.
Last week.
I made a
From
mistake.
last week. From last week.
Last week.
Last
from
week.
last
Yeah.
week. Oh, okay.
Last week. And that's why I said at the beginning of the year, I need to give you an introduction to go into this pshat. This till now is the introduction for how Reb Yaakov learns that Gemara. Odei Shlomar. Amay Nikra Avihu. V'hu d'la'el Yud Gimel Hey. That's what we just did. Pirashti. Sheyesh Mokum Laminim Litos B'Shimshon She'eni Yelud Ish. That Shimshon is immaculate conception, and he's born of God, not of man. He's the son of God. L'chein Hidgish Kan Avihu V'lo Aviv. That's why it says over here Avihu V'lo Aviv Kolomar. Aviv Haya Efshar Lefarish Ka'aba Chorek. Aviv you could be mafarish like a stepfather. Shigidloto. Aval Avihu. That's probably what the Christians are going to say, right? He had nothing to do with the husband of Mary had nothing to do with this, right? So the same thing over here. The Christians will say that Manoach had nothing to do. Abba Chorek. He's a stepfather. Aval Avihu Hainu Shalidu Yachad Im Imo. Kiyudua mehagra baderes Eliyahu liminehu, right? The Gra has minishikos pihu, not minishikos piv in shirashirim. Sheikhin shenichta baos hey vav, like avihu, right? Hey vav nichlolam hazocher v'anekeva gam yachad. Why didn't it say aviv? Because you don't have the hey over there, and the hey is Ote ki ote keneged anekeva, v'ot vav keneged azochar.
Wow!
Right. So he says the reason aviu is a remez to the hey is a remez to a nekeva. The vav is a remez to zochar. And o versus a hey. Right. His versus her. The Gra says. So he says to tell me, right, that there was a father involved in here. It wasn't just an immaculate conception. There was a mother. And there was a father, right? So that's why he says Avihu. The problem with this is the Avihu's in the wrong place, because the Avihu should be in the first chapter, right? In other words, when when Shimshon was born, if you had the Oviu there, it would be Gavaldik. This would have worked great. Rabbi Yaakov doesn't go into that. He just said, but Rabbi Yaakov doesn't try to explain in the different places where it says it. Why does it say it here? Why did it say it there? Why did it say it there? That's what we have to say. Before according to the Kabbalistic shot, he mamish explained it. He said, when it's without his wife, it says Avihu. It's beautiful what he says. Right? It's without his wife, so it's Avihu. But here he doesn't bother to explain it, but he does try to explain Shlomo also. V'chein b'Shlomo haya Pesach l'maranenim al yichuso Shabbat Sheva satetada mibala. We know that people were maranim, right? Who is Shlomo? Is he from Uriah Chiti? Is he from David? We don't know. There was a talk of the town, right? Was she? So she left. Yeah, she strayed away. Satata means like da is Aramaic for zot, zu or zot, right? Like betulta da, like you say in the ksuva, right? Mibala uriachiti ba'avar. L'chein hidgish hapasuk sheDavid HaMelech hu avihu molido. David HaMelech is his molido, right? There's that's why he calls him avihu, to stress the idea that he is his birthing father. Kederach Shamru. Shenikra Abba bar Abba Kohen, Oviv shel Shmuel b'shem Avua de Shmuel. Abba bar Abba, the Kohen, was the father of Shmuel, and he was called Abua de Shmuel. Right? Not of Avi de Shmuel, of Abua de Shmuel. Why? Mishum Maisa Shahai. Now, this Maisa is not in the Gemara, I'm pretty sure, but it's brought in the Seder Adoros, and it's brought, I think he brings it also from Sefer Yuchsin. Sefer Yuchsin, the one I have, is impossible to find anything in there. Maybe there's newer copies that it's easier. But it says like this, Sha'amrulo, Balayla, Shenit Abra Imo Shel Shmuel, Sheyilo Ben Chacham. It was said to Abba HaKohen, Abba bar Abba HaKohen, the father of Shmuel, he got a bat kol that came to him and said, in this night, if your wife gets pregnant, right, you're going to have Shmuel, the famous Shmuel of the Gemara, Rav and Shmuel, Sheyelo Ben Chacham. Ubolo al yidei kfitzas haderech balaylu, he was away from home, and through kfitzas haderech he came. So kilu a nes liishto. What? What'd you say? I didn't hear.
I heard that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Kvitza derech b'layla hu leishto, umiyad chazel l'mokim shayasham v'hayu choshvim shelo haytem uberes mimenu. They thought she was not uberes because he came and he left. They didn't see him. They knew he was on a trip, and he came quickly. B'kvitzas haderech, and he had intimacy, and Shmuel was born. Because it was announced to him, maybe through Eliyahu, the Malch. I never saw this inside, but Reb Yaakov obviously saw it. And he says that's why it was called the Sefer Yuchsin says, and also the what do you call it? The Seder Adoros says that's why it was called Avua de Shmuel, right? Because people shouldn't ask questions. How did she become pregnant, right? So same thing here. That by David HaMelech also they said his name has to be right. His name has to be also Avihu. Avihu, Avi, right? That's what it is. Okay, that is basically Reb Yaakov's idea. This is his fourth pshat, and I told you the weakness with the fourth pshat is that it should have been in his birth.
Gimel.
Yeah, Perek Yud Gimel now. And it's all different places, and it seems very arbitrary where it is, except according to the Kabbalistic pshat, the way Reb Yaakov is learning. But otherwise, it seems very arbitrary. So how do you really answer that up, right? That's a question I don't have an answer for. I remember Reb Yaakov telling me this pshat. but I didn't think of the question on the spot. So by the time I had the question, he was no longer alive. When I learned this from the Ksavim, he was no longer alive, so I don't have. I can ask Reb Yosef, see what he has to say, but that's the question really. Any questions on this? Oh, great, perfect, great.
Vivaldic.
Yeah, and now
Where
you
can we
should
get-
see that. What? You should see that. I've had it many times in many Gemaras. The word min is they use the word stuki, right? Who was mataking birchas aminin? The Gemara in brachas, right?
Shmuel
So Shmuel Akata. And some of the Gemaras it says birchas hatstukim, not aminim. I don't remember what it says in the Vilna Shas. It might also say hatstukim, but we know it is birchas aminim because that's what it should be over there. Right? It's according to many commentators against the Christians. It was made when the Christians were around, right? Well, aminim, right? Right? By the way, Reb Yaakov didn't daven the text that we have on that bracha. He didn't daven. How did I find out? Because Reb Yaakov once asked me a favor. He had yahrzeit. So he said he's in Brooklyn. And he doesn't want to daven in a balabatish shul. Why not? Because he's stanch monesri too long. So he said, I'd rather daven in a yeshiva. Can you go to Chaim Berlin? Right? When you go back to Chaim Berlin, ask the mashgiach if I could daven for the Yomid. Okay? So, because Chaim Berlin, he knows a yeshiva stanch monesri forever. He doesn't have to worry. Yeshivas are like, who could stand longer than the next guy. Right? So I went to the mashgiach. And I asked him, he says, Reb Yaakov doesn't need our permission to be a shlich tzibur here. He can do without our permission. I said, he's not going to do without your permission. Just call him and tell him. We didn't have cell phones. I went down to the phone booth and I called up Reb Yaakov in my uncle's house. My uncle lived in Flatbush. He was staying a few blocks away. And I said, the mashgiach said it's okay. You have to understand this. Reb Yaakov walks into the yeshiva. And already it went through the yeshiva that Reb Yaakov was dying for the Yom. Now Reb Yaakov was known as a Baal Digduk in his lifetime. Like none of the Gedolim were like Reb Yaakov and Digduk. So everybody took out a sitter. Like normally people down without a sitter, or they don't do when they hear Chazar Tashatz, they don't follow in the sitter, right? Everybody had a sitter, including myself. So Reb Yaakov, when he got to the V'lam al-shinim, he said like this, V'lam mushumadim, right? V'lam mushumadim altia sikva. V'lam mushumadim sikva. V'chol aminim kerega yovedim. V'chol aminim v'lam mushumadim sikva. V'chol aminim Sikva, v'chol amin. V'chol haminim keregi yovedu. One second. V'amushmodim al tisikva v'chol haminim keregi yovedu. V'chol evei amcha meir karesu. Umalchus zadon meirasa akeru sishaberes mager. And then I found it in the Vilna Siddur. There's a Siddur. You guys probably saw in some Ashkenaz Shul, there's a Vilna Siddur, right? So it's in the Vilna Siddur. It's also in that 2-volume Siddur. That Siddur, what's it called? Otzer Hatfila. It's 2 volumes. It's written about 100 years ago. 2 volumes. He also has 2 texts. One is the regular text, and then he has which Pashtus is going on on Rome, on the Roman Golas, right? On Golas Edom, right? Malchus Zodom. But today I'm not sure. It's not the Malchus of Pras. Maybe it's not the Malchus, right? But Reb Yaakov used said a different text, and everybody was shocked in the yeshiva, right? So he said, that's the real text. People asked him, came over to him, it's the real text. But because of the censor, they took it out, right? That's what he said. But
Sure.
that's,
So what do you
yes,
say now?
I actually say it like Reb Yaakov because he said it's the correct text.
Right.
Reb Shurin, Reb Shurin, I think
By
that's
Adam for the Yom, and I don't say it. I asked Reb Yaakov, like, why did you say it? You know, you don't have to say it publicly. So he said, in a yeshiva, you could tell them what the truth is. You don't have to daven like everybody else. You can tell them what the truth is in a yeshiva. They prefer that. So that's why he didn't care to say it there. But when I daven for the Yom, and I say just like it says in the Siddur, I daven for myself, I said, start B'lam Mishumadav. Question, what were you guys saying?
I wanted to read to you when you said this, I ran to my wife and I asked her to give me her Temani Siddur.
Oh, good.
And I want to read you the Girsa.
Okay, good.
La Mishumadim Ati Tikva Ko Hamidim Hamosrim Kerega Yovedu Umalchut Zadon Ta'akor V'Tishbor Mehera B'Yameinu Baruch Hashem Shover Evim Machnei Zadim.
Okay, so you see, it has
exactly
just
like
about the whole thing. It's almost the whole thing. Okay,
right.
Definitely in the period of Gaonim already, they had this text, and I found it in the Vilna Siddur and also in the Otzer Atfilas. He also brings the text also, but I'm pretty sure it's already from one of the Gaonim. I don't remember if it's Reb Sadia Gaon or Reb Hai Gaon. From one of the Gaonim already that they had this text, and throughout the centuries it was changed. By the way, when Reb Yaakov finished Aleinu, he didn't say V'nemar. He said Hashem Yimloch Lo'olam Va'ed Yiskadal V'Yiskadash Shmei Rabbah, and everybody was in shock. So Reb Yaakov said that's not part of Aleinu. They added that because of the Rosh Hashanah davening, right? Hashem Yimloch V'Nemar, right? He said they put it in later. The original tefillah is Hashem Yimloch L'Olam. That's the end. So he said the Kaddish Yatom after that. Everybody was in shock.
And Reb Shurin, if we're this is really I'm going a little bit off, but since you just mentioned that, did your grandfather say Yiskadav Yiskadash or Yiskadel Yiskadesh?
I think I remember him saying Yiskadal Yiskadash. And that's what I remember from the yeshiva. He didn't say it like the yeshivish people. Right. The yeshivish people, Yiskadel Yiskadesh Shemei Rabbo, right?
They're getting it from the Mishnah Brura, but all of the old men that I davened with when I was a little kid, Yiskadal Yiskadash.
Right, that's what I'm pretty sure most
in the old country. All the guys in the old country. I never heard these Skadelis Kadesh until I came to Israel in the yeshivas. They took it from the Mishnah.
Right. In America also they say in the yeshivas, but I'm pretty sure Reb Yaakov, if I remember correctly, I remember listening, I think he said Yiskadal v'Yiskadash.
And your father?
Also, my father definitely said that. I think my father told me Al Pi Dikduk it's more correct. I think he told me that.
I think so.
One Aramaic and one Hebrew?
What?
Isn't one Aramaic and one Hebrew?
Right, that's the kasha.
Yes, that is correct.
That's the kasha. So why should it be Skadel Skadesh? It's the whole thing is in Aramaic. Anybody interested? I have an entire article.
It's quoting a pasuk.
Article about it.
It's quoting a pasuk. That's why it should be in Hebrew.
But it's not quoting a pasuk. It's making an Aramaic version of the pasuk. It's clearly that it's coming from the pasuk in Yechezkel.
What in Yechezkel, right?
The entire prayer is in Aramaic. Why should the first two words be in Hebrew? It doesn't make any sense. If anybody's interested, I have an article that a guy wrote about this whole thing about Yiskadel Yiskadesh.
Oh, really? A scholar?
Yeah.
From where? Brandeis?
No. It's a Hebrew article, an Israeli article.
A from guy or a Maskil?
No, he's a from guy.
What was Rav Hutner's response to the Al-Mashinim that Rav Yaakov davened?
I'll tell you, I don't remember that Rav Hutner was there for Mincha that day.
Ooh.
I don't think he was there for Mincha that day.
He seemingly would have been familiar with the Vilna edition of that tefillah.
Probably, I assume that he would have been familiar with it. I want to tell you something just to leave you with this. When Reb Yaakov walked out of the yeshiva, okay, so the what do you call that? The executive director of the yeshiva, Avram Fruchtaler, who's a multi-millionaire, right? Had his Lincoln Continental, a black one, waiting with the door open for Reb Yaakov to take him. He said, he right away said, the Rosh Yeshiva, please go into my car. And Reb Yaakov looks up at the sky and he says, it's a very nice day today. I'm going to walk. And he was in shock. I saw his face. He was in shock because he knows Rav Hutner would never have walked. But Reb Yaakov held it's healthy to walk. So he never would take a car ride, except, of course, if it's too far to walk. But this was 3 or 4 blocks. It was 1 avenue block, 2, 3 short blocks, and then another half an avenue block. So altogether, it was probably an avenue block and a half and 2 shorter blocks. Rabbi Yaakov at that time was about 87, something like that. And he said, it's a nice day. I'd rather walk. And he walked with his son, Avram, his youngest son, who was walking back to the house. And Avram was smiling that Rabbi Yaakov said that, doesn't need the car. He could walk it, right? Avram Fruchtaler was b'shock. He was b'shock.
You think it was because Rav Yaakov didn't want to travel in a limousine?
No, because he already traveled in a Rolls Royce once, and he once traveled in a Jaguar.
Oh, God.
One time in a Jaguar, and one time in a Rolls Royce. There's 2 different stories about that, but we'll leave that for next week. Remind me next week. I'll tell you the 2 stories.
Peace and victory.
Take care, guys.
Okay, bye.
Thank you
We should
very
have
much.
Suras Tovos. Next
Bezoros
week we
Tovos,
shouldn't have to worry anymore.
Amen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.